Here we go again. All right. So last time we got deep into being the pretty nitty gritty, dark, and awful pages about war and destruction and how it's done on the steppes of Asia, followed by which how it was continued here in America. And now we are on chapter 6, A Permanent Heritage. The first section is called The Nephites with Jaredite Names. This is going to be good. All right, let's get started. In the first place, a number of undeniably Jaredite names turn up from time to time among the Nephites. Such a striking coincidence calls for the investigation, for it can hardly have been an accident. From the Book of Mormon, we learn that the Jaredite and Nephites spoke entirely different languages, and even a cursory search will show that Jaredite proper names have a peculiar ring of their own. Their most characteristic feature is the ending in M. This is called memation, and is actually found among the most ancient languages of the Near East, where it was followed by the later nunation, or ending in N. The most characteristic feature of classical Arabic, and also of Nephite proper names, as we noted above, he has a footnote that says examples of memation may be found in W.F. Albright's The Vocalization of Egypt Syllabic Orthography. Wow, okay. So, ending in N. So, if it ends in M, if you are of the Jaredite, and if you are Nephite, it ends in N, like Ammon and Ammon was the first one that came to mind. My brain is not working this morning. But yeah, Ammon, Omni, Hymner, except those are not ending in N. I would think Nephi. So I'm trying to figure out when he says that it was M, and this is called mimation, and is actually found among the most ancient languages of the Near East, where it's followed by later nunation, or ending in N, the most characteristic feature of classical Arabic, and also of the Nephite proper names, as we noted above. I'm trying to figure out, well, anyways, I'm thinking of more examples besides Ammon. And I'm sure there's plenty. They're just escaping my mind. The correct use and sequence of mimation and nunation in the Book of Mormon speaks strongly for the authenticity of the record, for the principle is a relatively recent discovery in philology. It may be illustrated by the only Jaredite common nouns known to us, curlum and cumum, and the only adjective, shelem, applied to a mountain because of its exceeding height, Ether 3:1. It is interesting that the original meaning of the best, his sentence structure is kind of interesting at times. It is interesting that the original meaning of the best known of Semitic roots, salam, may be a high place. In Arabic, sulam, S-U-L-L-A-M, ladder, stairway, elevation, with the idea of safety and hence peace as a secondary derivation. So we have shalem with an M at the end that is Near East and applied to high mountains from the Book of Ether, whereas salam, meaning a high place, is Semitic, and then the sulam, ladder, stairway, elevation, is a second derivation of that. So he's showing how it's all kind of been put together over time. But it is proper But it is the proper names that concern us here. When out of the short list of Jaredite names preserved to us, a respectable percentage turns up as Nephite names as well. It is high time to ask, is this one case where the author of the Book of Mormon has slipped up? Or is there something significant about those Nephites who bear Jaredite names? The answer is a surprise. Every one of these men has a Mulekite background and is a leader of subversive movements against the Nephite state and religion. The significance of this will appear at once if we consider that the only case of definite overlapping between the Jaredite and Nephite peoples is provided in the episode of Coriantumr and the Mulekites. Coriantumr, the last Jaredite chief, spent the last 9 months of his life among the Mulekites. These people had left Jerusalem 11 years after Lehi did, and therefore 3 years after Lehi's people had already settled in the New World. We are told that Coriantumr was discovered by the people of Zarahemla in Omni 21. Omni, yeah. Omni is my favorite book in the Book of Mormon, not because it's super short, but because there's so much history that happens in such a short time. And it's easy to overlook everything that happens in it. That's why Omni is my favorite. It's a ton of information, straight to the veins. Who must have been traveling quite a while to meet him, even halfway between their landing place in Central America. See? He's thinking it's in Central America. And Cumorah, which he knows is in upstate New York. So, he must have been traveling quite a while to even meet him halfway between their landing place in Central America and Cumorah. In all probability, they traveled a good deal more than halfway, since Coriantumr had been very badly wounded, and with not a soul to help him, could not have got very far. The fact that he lingered only 9 months after his rescue implies as much, though it does not necessarily prove it. The evidence strongly suggests that the Mulekites discovered Coriantumr shortly after the last Jaredite battle, and hence that they had been on the continent for quite a while, though some years fewer than the Nephites. The overlap between Mulekite and Jaredite culture was at least 9 months long, and may have extended over many years. At any rate, we have proof that the Jaredites made a permanent cultural impression on the Nephites through Mulek. For centuries after the destruction of the Jaredite nation, we find a Nephite bearing the name of Coriantumr, and learned that this man was a descendant of Zarahemla, the illustrious leader of the Mulekites. This shows the Jaredite influence reaching the Nephites through Mulekite channels, which is exactly what one would expect. The name had been preserved either in the royal family, Coriantumr the Jaredite would have been a guest of the chief, or in the records, most likely the former, since the people do not, as a rule, go to written histories for their names. While nothing is more persistent than personal names, most of those we use today being at least 1,000 years old. The first land settled by the Jaredites was Moron, a name still borne by one of the last Jaredite kings. Now the Nephite land in the borders by the seashore on the edge of the wilderness was called by them Moroni, and anyone with a rudimentary knowledge of the Near East will instantly recognize Moroni as meaning belonging to Moron, of Moron, the old I ending being the most familiar and unchanging suffix from the old Egyptian and Babylonian to modern Arabic, and always having the same significance of relationship. Both the time, the very end of the Jaredite history, and the place, the outer borderlands, agree in bringing the two names Moron and Moroni together in a cultural overlap. A parallel case is that of Morianton, the name of an early Jaredite king. Oh, that's the N names that he's talking about, the M and N names. So we have Moron and Moroni in Morianton, Morian Ton. Sorry. Ugh. The name of an early Jaredite king, and also of a land on the coast settled by a Nephite of the same name about 72 AD. In this case, the man might well have taken his name from the land he colonized, as ancient conquerors used to do. For example, Africanus or Germanicus, etc., being named for the old Jaredite coastland, which he resettled. The survival of Jaredite place names is further indicated by Hill Shim. The 10-year-old Mormon was told that he would be able to find that hill when he grew up, though it lay in another part of the country, because it would be called Shim. Mormon, see the book that is Mormon, chapter 1, verse 3, which shows that it actually went by its Jaredite name among the Nephites. For it is probable that Moroni is giving the hill its Jaredite name in Ether 9:3, since it is his practice to use Jaredite names in describing itineraries. Why itineraries? I guess places that he's going to be going. I think of itineraries as a schedule. In this usage, it seems like itineraries is places he's going to be going instead of a time schedule. And the very next name on the list after Shim is undoubtedly Jaredite, another Jaredite place name, Nahor, given to the wilderness to which the first Jaredite rebel withdrew, as well as a city built in that region, was born by a notorious Nephite apostate. Okay, this is becoming very interesting. Perhaps we should read the Book of Mormon with the Book of Ether first. Wow. Then we could see the influence of the Jaredites among the Nephites. That would be fascinating. Noah was a Jaredite king. Another Noah was a Nephite king. The name may be authentic Jaredite, for aside from the original biblical character Noah, does not recur elsewhere in Hebrew, either alone or as a component part of a name. According to C.L. Woolley, in his book Abraham, page 175, but is Harian, coming from the country north of Babylonia, i.e. the original Jaredite home. Noah's priest Alma betrays a mixture of culture, if not blood. His stamping around was his stomping ground. He calls it stamping. I'm used to stomping ground. Little changes over time. His stamping ground was Mulekite country, and two of his grandsons bore Jaredite names of Shiblon and Corianton. Though Korihor was the grandson of the first Jaredite king, the name was borne by a Jaredite of the last generation, when it may have been taken over by the Nephites as Korihor with a K. So there was the Korihor with a C that was Jaredite and K with the Nephites. But it's still Korihor. Considering how few Jaredite names we have, it seems clear then that we have here a definite overlapping of the two cultures. What clinches the matter is the fact that our Nephites with Jaredite names all have Mulekite background and connections. That Mulekite/Jaredite background represents a definitive cultural tradition among the Nephites and was conscientiously cultivated, is, I believe, very clearly shown in the behavior of men with Jaredite names. 5 out of the 6 names are definitely Jaredite, betray strong anti-Nephite leanings. And the 6th one, Shiblon, was only saved from the ranks of such rebels because an angel converted his anti-Nephite father. Of the others, Morianton sought to lead a great body of people back into the wilderness. Coriantumr was a notorious apostate subversive, Korihor rebelled against the church and state and tried to inaugurate a mass uprising. Nahor actually succeeded in setting up a rival system of religion and government in opposition to Nephite rulers, and was only stopped when he was executed for murdering a righteous judge. King Noah, of mixed Mulekite descent, horrified the Nephites by introducing the ways of the old Jaredite kings: oppressive taxation, whoredoms, and abominations. Elegant and spacious buildings. The pursuit of his opponents into the wilderness, priestly colleges and rituals, Herodials, and all the rest, priestly colleges, rituals, and Herodials. I don't know what Herodial means. Just a moment. I always hate to do this, but at the same time, I think it's very educational for me and perhaps for plenty of others, because it's odd when I come across something I'm really unfamiliar with, and it doesn't seem to have anything I can, let's see here, H-I-E. Well, let me just do it this way. H-I-E-R-O-D-U-L-E-S. Herodial. A slave serving an ancient temple, as in Greece, Anatolia, in the service of a specific deity. Because I recognize it being similar to Herodotus, but it's different enough that I couldn't figure it out. Okay. And ritual Herodials, so ritual priests who are basically servants or slaves. And all the rest. We have here two opposing ways of life, with strong indication that all the popular support is by no means on the side of the Nephites. The name of the prized rebel of them all, Gadianton, with an ending of an N, is not found in the short Jaredite list, is not to be wondered at, but we only need to compare it with such titles as Moriantun and Coriantun to realize that it is good Jaredite. Again, the sentence structure that he has is weird to me, because I would have said that with such titles as Moriantun and Coriantun, to realize that it is a good Jaredite name is how I would have said it. But anyway, so Gadiantun is like Moriantun and Coriantun, good Jaredite name. There is nothing in the Book of Mormon that shows direct contact between the Nephites and the Jaredites. There is always a go-between, the Mulekites, who, as the story of the elder Coriantumr shows, were the nearest neighbors to the Jaredites, and separated, as we learned from Mosiah's account, by considerable distance from the Nephites. Everything points to the absorption of a good deal of Jaredite culture by the people of Zarahemla shortly after their arrival. The tradition of a very Jaredite pattern of behavior and dissent against Nephite rule by men of Mulekite background bearing Jaredite names makes the case pretty clear. The dropping of the name Jaredites by their mixed descendants has many historical parallels. Thus, Hurrians lost their name so quickly and completely when they mixed with the Hittites that until recent years it was doubted that there ever were such a people. Yet we now know that it was the Hurrians, ranging over the vast back country to the north, that supplied the Hittites with their ruling class and their tradition of empire. Such a role may have scattered the nomad Jaredites of the last days, having played in contact with the more civilized but less aggressive people of Zarahemla, completely losing their Jaredite identity, but still given away, as they are the Hurrians, by the strange names of their leaders. Incidentally, the fact that Nephite weights and measures bear Jaredite names indicates long cultural overlap. Okay, this is getting really kind of cool, and frankly, very interesting. Now, here's the reason why. I would point out, because again, Omni, the Nephites were nearly wiped out, because they were warned in 2nd Nephi They need to stop. They were not given permission to do polygamy, and there's strong warnings in 2nd Nephi about that. And I believe that between that and them not following God as they were supposed to, there's very, very short, very brief mentions about how they get wrecked by the Lamanites, like absolutely wrecked. And so that's why they leave out of the land of Nephi. The original land of Nephi gets taken over by the Lamanites, and they wander into Zarahemla. And the only reason that Mosiah becomes king is because here this band of Nephites, which is a minority, come into the land of Zarahemla. They have written language and words and the interpreters. And if you read the last 116 pages, there's all sorts of things talking about it's their own kind of exodus again from the oppression of the Lamanites, because things went south, literally, not figuratively and literally. In the south, things went south because their relationship with the Lamanites just went bad, right? But this is also the setup for later on when, again, in Omni, they talk about the group that goes south to try and re-inherit the land that is to the south, which is the land of Nephi, which becomes the story of, what was his, King Noah's father's name? Zeniff, I believe. So Zeniff goes south to try and re-inherit it, and he fights, the first expedition, they fight amongst themselves, they end up killing themselves, which sucks. So they don't go and possess the land. But the second time, he's like, no, let's really go and do this. And so he does. And he brings families down. And so when he brings the families down and such, the Lamanites are like, yeah, sure. You can have this land back. That's perfectly fine. No problem. Barely an inconvenience. And followed by which the Lamanites, of course, try to capture them. But Zeniff, still at least trying to be righteous, holds off the Lamanites for a time. It's his son Noah, the wicked King Noah, which eventually, of the wicked priests that Noah sets up, Alma the elder, is one of the King Noah's wicked priests, okay? And it's his wickedness that brings on the pride, and then the Lamanites are able to come. Really cool stuff happens because King Noah is getting deposed. Gideon is going to slay King Noah as he's going up his tower. King Noah looks over and says, the Lamanites are coming. And so everyone has to go defend the city. And so Noah tries to grab his priests and run away. But because he killed Abinadi, he gets his comeuppance from, trying to run away. And they keep running and leaving. They say, leave their families, just protect me, leave their families. And then the priests get pissed at King Noah, and King Noah gets the stake just like Abinadi, just as Abinadi foretold. So I'm sorry, I really love that whole section, because again, this is why I love Omni. Omni is a linchpin to all these different places overlapping, and they're all just tiny little sentences, because this is the small plates of Nephi where everything is running out. And so they're like, I was given these plates, but I sucked at it, so here's the next guy. And, I sucked at keeping the plates, so here's the next guy. And, they all sucked at keeping the plates. And I'm not very good either, but I'll tell you what, here's some really crazy things that happened while I was here. And it's just these tiny little setups. And you also have where Korihor and Corianton, Corianton overlaps with the Mulekites in the keeping of the records, because they talk about how, we came up to the land of Zarahemla, and here in the land of Zarahemla, they had found this book of ether that comes much later in the Book of Mormon, right at the end, basically, after Mormon is doing his battles and everything up at Cumorah, and then he's handing things off to Moroni. Moroni finishes abridging ether and putting it in, and then Moroni has just a little bit of space to finish things up. It's just all really cool, because here you have these great editor prophets, Mormon, and minorly his son Moroni, which, again, I'm sure he named after Captain Moroni because of how much Mormon, the editor, just loved Captain Moroni. It's just all these intricacies of history overlapping, of people admiring the stories of other people, the weaving in of culture of these different places according to what is desired. He's right. It's amazing, and it's crazy layered. So, sorry. Yeah, the idea that these subversive leaders have Jaredite names kind of is interesting and starts to make sense. And I often wondered about certain names being given to people who are rulers of certain areas. Like I've mused earlier when we were talking about Lehi in the desert, when the judges take the thrones and they have Egyptian type priestly names because of the history of Lehi, where they would have brought in the Egyptian priest names from their history for it to suddenly appear to be those things. It's like when you ascend to these positions, do you get your name changed, right? So this follows that same line of thinking. All right, so next is the hiders. Let me see how long this is. We could make it. Yeah, let's roll. Decisive, I believe, in determining the ultimate fate of the Jaredites is the fact that they were past masters at dodging and hiding. Their history begins with Nimrah and Omer hiding in the wilderness, and ends with Shiz and Coriantumr, and Ether himself doing the same. Are we to believe of such people that when part of them fled to the army of Shiz, and part of them fled to the army of Coriantumr, none of them attempted to flee into the wilderness? Or that no one tried to get away when the cry went throughout the land, that Shiz was approaching, sweeping the earth before him? Or that no one succeeded in escaping when the people began to be frightened and began to flee before the armies of Coriantumr? When we read that the wild hosts swept off the inhabitants before them, all they that would not join them, the picture is that of people doing their best to get out of the way, in the classic picture of those who flee to the mountains or break for the woods on the approach of the Assyrian king, the Mongol hordes, or the modern Chinese general. There's a footnote here. And it has information. They flee to the mountains is the Assyrian formula, e.g. Luckenbill, that's the author he's quoting. Upon leaving Balanch, says Marco Polo, you traverse a country that is destitute of every sign of habitation, the people having all fled to strong places in the mountains in order to secure themselves against the predatory attack of lawless marauders by whom these districts are overrun. In the flat regions of the north, everyone tried to escape into the woods at the approach of the hordes. That is Vladimistrov of Chinggis Khan. Genghis Khan. There's so many ways of pronouncing that first name. Anyways, so he's just showing that that's a common thing. Nowadays, we'd call them preppers, or people who would have their bug-out bag. In Asia, the escapees often formed themselves for survival into formidable warlike tribes. The modern Goloks are such, and carried on a tradition in the style of warfare remarkably like that of North American Indians. Cough, cough, hint, hint. Centuries of wars of annihilation have given the people of Central Asia a great heritage of the hiding instinct, and only by using and cultivating this have they avoided extermination. As we have seen, this valuable instinct was zealously cultivated among the Jaredites, and nowhere is there any indication that none made their escape, either during the final war or at an earlier time. I would also add to this, I always thought it was odd that Ether, the prophet who came and told of the destruction of Coriantumr and Shiz at the end, would just kind of like write his plates, hide his plates, and walk off. And, you know, if he does that, there's no way we know what really happens in the end. It's like when Moroni finishes sealing up the Book of Mormon, he puts it in the Hill Cumorah. We got nothing else. That was just the end. He obviously didn't write more on the plates. His story actually doesn't end, though. That's the funny thing. It's like he becomes like the steward over the plates for getting Joseph Smith to retrieve the plates and instruct him in things. So we have his angelic part, but the rest of his mortal life, we'll never have any history of. And so, I've often wondered about Ether, this prophet, that it's like he's writing down and witnessing these things and then finishes up his plates and puts them down, and there you go. Again, I freaking love Omni. All these things that bind stuff together. Wow. All right. So when Chiz and Coriantumr attempt a universal Levian Mass, it was not the work of 4 weeks to bring their armies together, but of 4 years, which argues an outstanding lack of patriotic passion among the people in general. Such levies took just as long in Asia, e.g. those of Genghis Khan, because he spells it with a J instead of a G. And here, down here, they have Chenghis Khan. So take what you will from whatever way you want to say Genghis Khan, Genghis Khan, Chenghis Khan. All those of Genghis Khan and the king of Khwarizm? K-H, so Khwarizm. So such levies took as long in Asia, e.g. those of Genghis Khan and the king of Khwarizm, and for the obvious reason that the people were very widely scattered, out of touch with the central governments, reluctant to cooperate in an enterprise in which they had nothing to gain but wounds. The same situation is clearly suggested in Ether 15:14. They were, for the space of 4 years, gathering together the people, that they might get all who were upon the face of the land, and that they might receive all the strength which it was possible that they could receive. Note the purpose clause. We are not told that they achieved their goal, but only that they tried. And in the next verse, the statement, when they were all gathered together, is simply a general remark. It is a favorite expression with Homer that could be made of any group, no matter how large or how small. On top of this, the established Jaredite practice, even though the party was the only passing through, now there is a great deal said of the Book of Mormon about the past and future of the Promised Land, but never is it described as an empty land. The descendants of Lehi were never the only people on the continent, and the Jaredites never claimed to be. While on the subject, I cannot resist the temptation to quote for you a remarkable passage from Origen's First Principles, in which that zealous scholar quotes from Clement, who, as you know, comes close to being the earliest Christian writer after the Apostles. Clement, the disciple of the Apostles, recalls those whom the Greeks designate as Antichthonians, dwellers on the other side of the earth, and other parts of the earth's sphere or circuit, which cannot be reached by anyone from our regions, and from which none of the inhabitants dwelling there is able to get to us. He calls these areas worlds, when he says the ocean is not to be crossed by men, but those worlds which lie on the other side of it are governed by the same ordinances, literary dispositions, of a guiding and directing God as these. Ooh, someone had peeked ahead in time. Here is a clear statement that the earliest Christians taught that there were people living on the other side of the world who enjoyed the guidance of God in complete isolation from the rest of the world. That's way cool. Way, way cool. The teaching was very soon lost, along with other precious things, and is never proved again after Origen. Augustine definitely opposes it, but it well illustrates how the saints in every age have made due allowance for the dealings of God with all humanity, and refused to regard their own limited experience as the only measure of divine providence among men. In 1898, a farmer, grubbing up stumps near the town of Alexandria, Minnesota, turned up a stone slab containing what appeared to be an ancient runic inscription, like the like the Book of Mormon, the thing was promptly denounced as a fraud, and the universal consensus of the experts heaped scorn upon the clumsy forgery for 40 years. But now it transpires that the Kensington Stone, as it is called, is no fake, but very probably the genuine article. So much for the authority of scholarship. For complete account of the Kensington Stone, see S. N. Hagen, The Kensington Runic Inscription. The inscription tells us of bands of Norsemen wandering about in the Middle West at least 130 years before Columbus. Oh, God, yeah, and that's what everyone loves to talk about in school now. It's like, no one cares about Columbus. No one needs to know about Columbus. It was the Vikings that got to the Americans earlier before him. Yeah, well, it's like, yeah, but the problem is the reason Columbus is important is because he was an explorer for an official colonizing country of Europe with the intent to spread its land, which caused massive world-changing stuff to happen. This is why Columbus is, plus he was also trying to do everything as legit and kindly as possible. Not that it went out without a hitch, because the men who were with him kept really begrudgingly following when he's like, stop taking advantage of the natives. Stop doing all these bad things. They didn't like him for that. Anyway. So, whether true or not, does the Book of Mormon have any objection? Of course not. The Kensington Stone also tells us that these Norsemen suffered a grim and bloody end. Quite in keeping, in fact, with the Book of Mormon pattern. Yeah, we offer this as a test case. For once we have admitted that all pre-Columbian remains do not have to belong to Book of Mormon people, the field is clear to the anthropologist. And the problem of the Book of Mormon archaeologist, when such appears, will be to find in America things that might have some bearing on the Book of Mormon, not to prove that anything and everything that turns up is certain evidence for that book. It is this obvious fact I pointed out in the article of Era of April 1947. And this is true, because we never, it is an elementary assumption, an elementary as in small learning, if you do not deeply think about these things, it is a basic misunderstanding that when you read the book and you think that, it's only these people were here. No. And he's pointing out that the Jaredites were here before Lehi and his family and the Nephites and Lamanites. And then to think only the Nephites and Lamanites ever came here. No. We're not sitting here saying that we don't hold the position. Like Hugh Nibley mentioned earlier, that if it's not, there was some leader that he quoted that said, if it's not in the Bible, then it's not true. And so all the historical stuff and evidences that is provided by the world don't matter, because if it's not in the Bible, then it's not true. We don't hold that stance. We don't sit there and say, well, if it's not in the Book of Mormon, and if it's not in the Bible, then it's not true. No. The Book of Mormon is specifically a record that is that was bound together by Mormon as an editor. And all the books that are in it come from the specific points of view of the people who are writing it, who are generally religious and cultural and civilization leaders. Does it propound to be a journal of every little person in every little village? No, not at all, nor could it be. And so do you get the idea that, it's like, yeah, we're following this Jaredite thing. Well, would they have known that it was Jaredite? They would have called it Mulekite at that point. And even then, it's just like, I don't know. I'm not being very clear in how I'm speaking, because I have this grand concept, but the idea is that overall, when people apply a standard that we don't hold and try to attack it, that straw man of, you just think all the Native Americans all came from specifically the Nephites and Lamanites. It's like, no, there's Jaredites as well. And besides that, there were other people here. Anyway, so there is not a word in the Book of Mormon to prevent the coming of to this hemisphere of any number of people from any part of the world at any time, provided that only that they come with the direction of the Lord. And even this requirement must not be too strictly interpreted, for the people of Zarahemla had brought no records with them, and they denied the being of their creator. See Omni 17. Omni. I.e., they were anything but a religious colony. No one would deny that anciently this land was kept from the knowledge of other nations. 2 Nephi 1:8. But that does not mean that it was kept empty of inhabitants, but only that migration was in one direction, from the old world to the new. For even as Lehi was uttering the words just quoted, the Jaredites were swarming in the east, and the old man refers to others yet to come, all those who should be led out of other countries by the hand of the Lord. Must we look for all those in the Book of Mormon? Next is men out of Asia. This is just way cool. And then we have the appendix, which I might just have its own reading, because there's like 2 small appendices. So, wow. All right. So we were talking about Jaredites and Mulekites being joined together, their names showing up, and how that's depicted linguistically and through tradition and positions, just like there's other positions that have the influence of Egyptian names showing up, because Nephite culture being influenced by the Egyptian culture, because Lehi left while during the time of great Egyptian influence in Jerusalem. It's just awesome to dig into these. Like, as people who are regular members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we often just read the Book of Mormon and take it at its face value, and we don't understand the deep complexities and history that's behind it. We don't. We just sit there and go, yeah, here's this character, that character. And we take those stories and we're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. You know? And we do that for all sorts of things, because we have so much to get through. I mean, think about it. Everyone has their everyday life that they're living themselves, that they're all involved in. Trying to get someone to sit down and actually just read the scriptures daily is like one of these high, lofty goals that, not everyone attains. And these are good members of the church, too. And it's just, it takes effort to sit there and put in the time to schedule. I am reading. And then when you read, you take it for face value, because we're not these experts in other cultures and countries and names and other things like that. And so it becomes very apparent that, most of the time we just take it at face value, whether it's the Bible, whether it's the Book of Mormon, whether it's the Doctrine and Covenants even, our most recent church history. How many of us dig deeper into the history of the church, of where were these places? What were their experiences? Because we just have the words that are in the Doctrine and Covenants. And so there is much to be gained spiritually from reading all the scriptures. Absolutely. And especially if you're a new member of the church, or if you are trying to grasp the doctrines and get the basics, and you should always return to the scriptures, because even as you're learning all this extracurricular stuff, it enriches things immensely, but it will never replace the basics of understanding the teachings of Jesus Christ given to us throughout time. And that's what the scriptures are for. It's for us to go, wait, yeah, I could learn about all the different names between the Nephites and Lamanites and Jaredites, and how they mixed, and how they're in specific positions of power, and how it shows up in specific lands and other things like that. And it says, it says the Book of Mormon's true. Great, yes, that's wonderful. But did it help you understand how God is dealing with his children? Did it help you understand how God is dealing with you? Did it help you understand how you can be a better person? Are you following the commandments of Jesus Christ better by knowing how the Book of Mormon is more true because of these names? See, that's the conundrum. It is important to fill in your history, to have a better understanding of what is going on as you read these, because you get a better picture of it. But ultimately, you always have to return to the scriptures themselves. You always have to read the original information so you can get the important part, which is, how does God deal with his children, and how is God dealing with you personally? You need an answer to a prayer? You may want to read those scriptures that deal with faith and prayer and knocking and asking and receiving. You may want to go to the temple so you can knock and ask and receive. You may want to be able to pray in your home in a sacred way and in a serious way, so that way you can knock and ask and receive. And so that way you have at your fingertips the way that you can commune with God. Because the idea is to have that personal relationship, but to sit there and you have all these check marks to do, not because the check marks help you to earn your way to salvation, as others would love to sit there and lay at our feet, but to point us towards the direction that God wants us to, towards him and Jesus Christ, so that we can hear Jesus, that we can follow Jesus, that we can do as he would do, and do everything in his name, and pray to the Father, and receive the blessings from the Father. It's just... So why do I enjoy all these books so much? If ultimately it is important that we always return to the scriptures, we sometimes can get burnout because it's like, yeah, I know the milk stripping story. Or, yeah, I know the story of Alma. It's like, yeah, but in the time of life that you're in now, do you feel more like Alma the Elder, as he was a wicked priest, or after being a wicked priest? Do you feel more like Alma the Younger, where you need to repent, or after he's repented? Do you feel more like trying to help people and it's not working, when Alma the Elder and Alma and Amulek went to the Ammonihah, to the city of Ammonihah? You know, these stories are meant to relate to us, and especially when they're focused on God and his dealings, it's much more enriching to our own lives. Because when we go out to work every day and grind away 8 hours of our lives doing whatever it is that we have our employment in, are we seeing other people as children of God? When we listen to all the different news stories and all the different channels from our media, are we seeing people as children of God? Even when they want to enrage us with their false railings and accusations, when people have ideas that are just so out of whack, and God, aren't they just, and I'm totally right and they're absolutely wrong. Do we sit there and apply the love of God and the faith in Jesus Christ at the moment when those chips are down in the minor ways? Are we easy to call our fellow man fools instead of our brother and sister? So, long story short, we always have to have the gospel as the basis, because it will point us towards God, Jesus Christ. I think we absolutely need to fill in our understanding of the scriptures with extracurricular materials, activities, and scholarship, so that it becomes more enriching. Not just to sit there and say, rah, rah, ree, the Book of Mormon's awesome, but help us get a better picture of really what is going on and how they view and see and do things. Because, I don't know, I think it helps it make it more tangible and real and more relatable to my own life. For some people, it may alienate them, because they're like, well, I have no idea what it's like to drive camels and be under the desert sun and other things like that, or ride as an Asiatic horde into battle. That's true. Filling in the details could make it farther away from you. But at the same time, if you have enough awareness and empathy to look at things from another person's point of view, that can allow you to sit there and go, oh, well, yeah, their situation was entirely different than mine, but you can see that even though they had this crazy different experience than me, the principle of loving and teaching and getting to someone through teaching them faith and repentance and belief in Jesus Christ and praying to the Heavenly Father will help them in that. Why in the world would it be so hard to get someone here now who has, their own worries and such, just like they did? We're not all that different. The situations may seem wildly different, but you can understand how they have parallels. So that would be why I specifically think that enriching the understanding gains you a lot more depth and empathy and applicability to different sections of your life depending on what you're dealing with. So may it enrich your life, and may God be with you.